one of the most infamous and controversial bands in the world. W.A.S.P, the 40th Never Stops World Tour with special guest, Armored Saint. W.A.S.P live. Go to waspnation.com for tour details and tickets. W.A.S.P, feel the sting.
All right.
Welcome. Bid you welcome. This is my music corner of the world. John Clauser, Johnny Metal, the Metal Dad, and I am here today with my fellow locomotive man, my fellow wasted white boy, my fellow person who was probably involved in slaying Mary Jane. I'm talking about John the Music Nut. Brother, how you doing?
I'm doing great, brother. And
yes.
How did you hear about that? How did you know that I slayed Mary Jane?
Ancient Chinese secrets.
My husband, some hotshot. Here's his ancient Chinese secret. Calgon.
Gotta love it. Gotta love some good old Calgon. Who would have thought who would think we would talk about Calgon on a W.A.S.P Wednesday episode? But that's what we're gonna do because you just never know with us sometimes. But
that's true.
But today, yes, if you didn't figure out by the song titles, today on April 3rd, 2001 is when this one was released to the world. We're talking about Unholy Terror, released on Metal Is Records, another subsidiary of Sanctuary Productions and Sanctuary and BMG and all those little labels things. But hey, Metal has had a couple of other stuff too. I think they released a couple Halford albums and a couple of other things, some maybe some Iron Maiden reissues, but chart wise, not much to talk about here. Again, only got up to 88 on the German charts, so not a whole lot there. This album, we start we make a little bit of a departure from the attitude of Haggertys. So we kind of dip back into a little bit more serious kind of serious stuff, but and with with a little bit of other stuff mixed in there. So John the Music Nut, let's you have at it. Let's go. Let's see what you think about Unholy Terror.
All right. Thank you so much, John.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. You got it. Unholy Terror. Very good album. I've only been listening to this just recently, just full disclosure, and I'll tell you what, this is their most solid album in a long time. Back on this album, you got Blackie on guitar, acoustic guitar, lead vocals, and he brings the keyboards back. And it has that same feel like those great, wonderful albums from earlier in the catalog that you can check our reviews out on Headless Children and Crimson Idol right here on my music corner. It's got a bit of that feel. You got Chris Holmes on lead guitar. I believe this is his last album with W.A.S.P.
And is he really on it?
I'm thinking he is. Some of these solos are very Chris-like, but you may know more than me. But some of these solos, I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's Chris. Okay, we got Mike Duda on bass and backing vocals. Mike's still there to this day, excuse me. And as for the drums, this was you had Frankie Banali played on let's see, I see 5 tracks on here, and Stet Hallen played on 4. There is one song on here that doesn't have any drums. So let's get into the album. If you do like late 80s, early 90s W.A.S.P, there is a lot to like here. We got a strong opener and Let It Roar. A very hard-hitting opener. It's heavy, it's riveting. Great chorus. Another in a long line of strong openers for W.A.S.P. Hate to Love Me kicks ass.
Mm-hmm.
And another time, Hate to Love Me would have got some love. It would have been a video. It would have got some radio play, maybe even AOR play. It's maybe a heavy song for AOR, but this is just great. I mean, it's got a great pre-chorus, an excellent chorus. It's very strong. I love Chris's guitar solo here, whether it's him or not. I love the guitar solos in the middle and on the outro. I think this song burns. One of the best songs on the album. And speaking of best songs, I think Locomotive Man is right there. That one is a stronger track. It does remind, now, before I get into this any further, one thing that I've read over the years about these later albums by W.A.S.P is that they're recycling some riffs and they're recycling some song structures. I hear a lot of Rebel and the FDG on his. I think it's the same chorus. I'm sorry, it's the same chords and it's the same structure. It is a heavier song. I still think it's a wonderful track, but I do hear a lot of Rebel and the FDG on it. I still like it a lot, though. The next track is the title track, and that's just more of an intro. It's just Blackie and the guitar. It's very slow and eerie. It works out very well because it leads right into Charisma, which is very slow and militant. It's got a lot of biblical references in it. A lot of his pro-country references in it as well. This is a very strong track. The next track is I'm sorry, my bad. I just talked about Charisma. Who Slayed Lady Baby Jane? I was about to say Lady Jane. That's the Stones. Or Mary Jane is
or Mary Jane. Yeah, that would be Tom Petty. Yeah.
Or it could be Rick James.
Or Rick James, right.
Yeah. So, Who Slayed Baby Jane? Another great anthem. What I really like about this song is it goes into the chorus and then it goes into a different riff and it gets heavier. I think that's something different for W.A.S.P. I think this really works very well. It's a very strong track. Euphoria is a instrumental. It has a feel like Mephisto Waltz from Headless Children. Not quite like it, but it has that kind of feel. It's not the same just acoustic line in it, but it leads into the wonderful Ravenheart. That's a very strong track. Here the keyboards are back. You really hear the keyboards on this one. It does have a feel of something from Headless or something from Crimson Idol. So, and Blackie's playing all the keyboards on here, even though it does sound like Ken Hensley is his Blackie on here. This is very good. I think now this one, the beginning reminds me of Love Machine. A little bit.
See that.
Yeah, that reminds me a little bit of Love Machine. But again, very strong track. Evermore is the ballad. Oh, welcome return for the ballads, because wow, W.A.S.P do the ballads so well, particularly that wonderful voice of Blackie's. Does this remind you a little bit when this starts out? Does this remind you of Thank You by Led Zeppelin?
I could see that. I can see that.
This reminds me a lot of Thank You. Now, when I'm saying these things, it's not really criticisms. Oh, it sounds like this song. It sounds like that song. It's just something that I picked up.
Yeah, I can see that.
And this one really came out to me with that guitar line and the keyboards. I'm like, yeah, this is like their Thank You, but it's quite good.
Yeah.
The chorus is fantastic on here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very good track. Wasted White Boys is the great closer. This reminds you a little more of something from the first two albums with its energy and its passion. So it's very good closer. So in closing, I would say this is a return to form. I don't think there's anything quite as good as Damnation Angels on this, because I think Damnation Angels is a dynamic song. It's wonderful. But there's some that are really close. But as far as how consistently strong it is, they're best since Crimson Idol.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, this is and I think this was very unfairly maligned by the critics, and that's something we can get into later. But yeah, if you gave up on this band, pick up Unholy Terror or check it out on Spotify or Amazon or YouTube, wherever else you listen to music. I would give this a solid 8.
Yes. Yes, that's kind of about where I put this at, is about an 8.
Okay.
Now to answer the questions of those, well, what do you mean that's not Chris Holmes? Well, Roy Z actually plays a couple of guitar solos on this one. He actually plays the lead guitar on Wasted White Boys and Who Slayed Baby Jane. So okay. Yes, so it is Chris on Hate to Love Me, but I have read somewhere where he's like, I don't remember doing anything on that album. So it's possible that he was already gone, and maybe there's some uncredited stuff that, hey, anybody out in the tour seeing W.A.S.P, ask him about this album. Maybe let's see if he delves a little more for info about this. But anyway, so okay, so this is where I was taking notes on this baby, because this thing is where it starts getting deep. There is, in the original Metal Is version, there is a nice long little piece that Blackie wrote in regards to a lot of these songs that's on this album. And so we talk about, it's been talked about where Blackie's faith started. He was going through his faith journey. And
yes,
the more I read through this, I have a feeling it was starting about this time when he was writing for this album. Because it's you can definitely tell it's very evident. So I'm just going to, before I go into what he says in here, I'm just going to go by my feelings on what I wrote about each of the songs. So Let It Roar, amazing opener. Just, my feeling is there's so much of this album that for those who like the harder, faster from Live in the Raw, and maybe that kind of style, I kind of feel like this album's for you. Okay, maybe not lyrically, but that if you like that musical style of the harder, faster song, and maybe the Manimal and things like that, then this album is going to be for you, because this is where I think that seems to be. It's not that really thrashy, speedier stuff like you saw in like with Headless Children, like with like Heretic and stuff like that. But you still get these good solid rock and roll hooks and a lot of that in a lot of these songs. So Let It Roar. So here's my notes. Is it a fight song? Is it a call to order? Is it a reason to stand up? Maybe that call to fight for what you believe in, or to stand for it. It's, when you get up there and you are fighting for that thing that you believe in, it really is like a rush. It's like a rush of adrenaline. It's almost like kind of like a drug. So you get that feeling of, let it roar, and it's ready to rumble time,
Mm-hmm.
And it's a rush. And I think almost the question here is it something that's worth fighting for or praying to? Because if you look through some of the lyrics in this, oh, get down on your knees and bow to thunder, and who's your God and what you're praying for. Oh, it's a killer, baby. Oh, you're going to die in vain. Or are you going to die in vain? Will you cry? You're going to let it roar. And so you have these different lines where it's like, maybe, is what you're fighting for really worth the while? Obviously if it gives you that kind of rush, maybe it really is, so a very strong opener, but I think it has a lot of caution to it. Hate to Love Me, another banger of a track. Man, I remember when I got this and I started hearing this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing song. But here's another thing that I think, this is kind of what I think Blackie's trying to say is, the thing, there's a verse in the Bible where Paul goes, the Apostle Paul goes a little psychotic. It's like, I do, but I don't want to do. And it's something along that line. I don't know the verse exactly, but this is kind of what this is kind of what Hate to Love Me is like. It's like, it's not a good thing to do, but you love to do it. And you hate that you hate loving the fact that you're doing this kind of thing, so it's really kind of a warning against like almost like an addiction, and just those evil little personality traits that sneaks in with people, because it says, there's a line in here that says, "Mom and Daddy made me what I am. I've got no face, but I've got a name. I'll touch and I'll add you to my fame. I'll set you free, but understand, Mom and Daddy made me what I am. The mad eyes of your lover, and through your soul I see. Now you'll never run." So it's like, again, it's like very cautionary kind of lyrics here, but still, my gosh, that guitar solo at the end is a fantastic solo. Love that solo. Locomotive Man and the Killer Babies is the little parentheses in this thing. His, in the liner notes, there's a quote here. Blackie says, "His life is the ride, and his parentheses loco motive is out of control." So what I'm reading in this with this, what he talks about, this is another one of those songs where it's like, here you're talking about, the Jonathan character. He's wanting that love. He's wanting that attention. He's not getting it. And so he goes out, he becomes the rock star, but he's still very empty inside because he still wants that affection and attention from his parents. Now when this album comes out, you're about 2 years removed from Columbine and school shootings. And the idea here, I think, is when you get that desperate for love and attention, and you just have this rage inside you because you're not getting that, when that locomotive starts going, you're not going to hear it coming, and all of a sudden, boom. And I think that's kind of an example. Again, I don't mean to be preachy. I don't mean to be whatever here, but I think that's what you get when you get stuff like Columbine. You get the different school shootings. You get all these mass bombings and all these different things that you see happening. There's some very hurt people that are going out and committing these crimes. So he's telling a story here. He's not advocating for it. He's just telling a very deep story here. And I'm just like, whoa, that's chilling to think about when you stop to think about it. See, I told you this was going to get deep. Unholy Terror and leading into Charisma. So here again, when you read through the lyrics of Unholy Terror, so the first two lines, it's the serpent in the Garden of Eden. The next lines, referring to John and what he sees in the book of Revelation. The next four lines talking about organized false religions. So you have a lot of that kind of stuff creeping into this. The next two lines, Jesus and Judas. After that, the Spanish Inquisition. Bet you didn't expect the Spanish Inquisition to come in. So, okay, good. They're not going to rush in on me. Monty Python fans will get that joke. Okay, sorry. But you if you know history and you know what the Spanish Inquisition was about, well, that's not a good. That doesn't exactly put Christianity on a goods pedestal, if you know what I mean. The next couple lines of that, the Nazis, what they did. The next two lines, Nostradamus describing his vision of Adolf Hitler. And I've never read much about Nostradamus, although I do like the Judas Priest album. Then the next few lines, you have he talks about the assassination of John Lennon, and then Karl Marx, conspiracy and assassination of JFK and MLK. And then the last few lines talking about Khrushchev and Nixon with the Cold War. Okay, so that's Unholy Terror. So you get all these little lines of, where Blackie's just really diving into history here, and he's pulling out all these figures and all these people, and their leadership, something to really be worried about. Charisma. Again, we get this slow, plodding Zeppelin-like feel, like you said, very marching, militant sounding, especially toward the end of the song.
Yes.
But you get this snarling little rhythm and groove throughout the riff through the whole thing. Again, so here he's looking at the first four lines, Napoleon. Then he goes to Caligula. Okay, I'm some of the seven sins. Vanity is the lust of men. So you get that and what Caligula was all about. Next couple lines, Ku Klux Klan. Next couple lines, Charles Manson, hypnotic charm, mesmerizing face. My soul has a dark embrace. Yeah, anybody who knows Charles Manson, that nails him to a T. The next couple lines, manifest destiny, doctrine that was the destiny of the U.S. to expand across North America to enslave and destroy Native American Indians. So that's where that comes into. Next couple lines, the Pope and the Vatican. I am a liar, blinding your vision, Vatican man. So that's, you get that kind of, what people think about the Vatican. Let's see, Christian and Muslims leaders waging war, preaching fear and using religion with the Bible and Quran. So here again, you get like the Crusades, you get all those, you get those kind of things, and people standing up using the Bible or the Quran as their linchpin to wage all these battles. Well, that's not really what either of them are totally about. So, so wrong. And they do it in the name of God. That's the big thing. So the next couple lines, I wrap myself in the American flag and tell the people for which I stand. Ronald, again, talking about Nixon, Reagan, Al Gore. You have the Antichrist. You have Adolf Hitler in the last parts, Mao Zedong, and then lastly concludes with Satan, talking about, again, using the book of Revelations here, where Satan comes back as like a main political figure. I'm coming back to I'm God, to you believe, to I'm charisma, because it's meant to be a charismatic figure. So here again, we're getting really, really deep into the psyche here, but this is just what a lot of this stuff has been foretold. It's been written in the Bible. It's been written by Nostradamus. So if you believe any of the Nostradamus things, but again, really deep, really strong stuff about leaders and how they can be misjudged or misused with their leadership, and how they just take it to too many extremes. Okay, time to breathe. Really deep. Told you it was going to get deep, folks. Who Slayed Baby Jane? My Feeling. Great track. Probably the sleaziest song on this album. It's kind of takes some of that sleaze of the early days, and they mix it with some of the KFD attitude. Because again, it's like, I mean, some of these lyrics are really kind of gruesome here. I was like, I love that fixed and dilated look that's in your eyes. I'll make you worse and more perverse than you when you were alive. I'm thinking, oh boy. So then you need a nice little quiet track of euphoria. This kind of takes you off into this nice kind of high feeling of a little bit of Zen maybe, and then it kicks into Raven Heart. Kind of almost like maybe a vampire eternity style of song, maybe, because it talks about, here again, it talks about like crimson kisses bleeding my raven heart, tales of the dark side, here is all right. Bring me the nighttime forever. It's all you're dying for. Take my hand and I'll show you forever night. So I don't know, maybe a vampire kind of feel to it, but still another great track. Evermore. I got the thank you part, but you know what? I see this also as a sequel to Forever Free. I get that. I got that kind of a little bit in the music too. And to me, what I was reading from in the liner notes here, Blackie kind of takes a look at what he saw with the Native Americans as far as reincarnation. And while he wasn't really into that, he was looking into it and see if it was something that he could feel hopeful about. And, maybe there's something to be said about, I'm not really into the whole reincarnation thing personally, that's just me. Maybe I'm wrong in feeling like that, but that's just, I don't see that. But maybe there, because I think one life on this world, on this earth is enough. I don't think I want to take too many trips around this place in a different, because my luck, I'll come back as a bug and somebody would squash me too quick. But a beautiful track. I mean, you missed that tender voice of Blackie that we longed for since the Still Not Black Enough album.
Yes.
Because we didn't get it in KFD, we certainly didn't get it in El Dorado, and we didn't get it on the Sting. So, or even Double Winged Assassins. The last track ends with a banger, Wasted White Boys. Here again, I think this is just getting you. This kind of just gets you. It's like a prequel to the beginning track. It's like, this is getting you fueled up and you're going to go out and rumble. Let it roar. That's basically to me what this song says. But again, a strong track, a great end to the album. I think a killer solo at the end by Roy Z. I got to read this one little part though in this album. So the album was started in December 1999, completed in January 2001. So it took about a year for him to do. As with most records we've done, Unholy Terror is a diverse mix of serious ideas, dark humor, and rebellion. I think it reflects not only my personality, but real W.A.S.P fans' personality as well. You are a highly interesting bunch of wild, weird, whacked out, and wonderful folks. Don't ever change. And that's from Blackie himself on this in the liner notes to this. So I think that's a great description for W.A.S.P fans personally. So I guess I can see that in myself because I saw that a lot in me, especially in the early days. So anyway, wow, that was some deep stuff I just went into there. So take it away. I'm going to give it back to you and see if you have any rebuttal or if you have any other fun things you want to throw out there with in regards to this.
Well, that was a wonderful analysis of those lyrics. I mean, how many different things that Blackie is speaking of throughout here. I mean, it just talks about, gives proof positive of what a great songwriter he is. I mean, he's not just Animal or I Want to Be Somebody, as great as I Want to Be Somebody is. I mean, he can get very deep. And I mean, a lot of people or more casual fans are like, oh, he's the Blind in Texas guy or the I Want to Be Somebody guy. But I mean, you go into this catalog, I mean, he went very deep early on. I mean, the albums that we love the most, and a lot of the W.A.S.P fans love as well. But here, yes, he certainly does go back to it, but even more so, based on what you were saying about these songs, particularly on the title track, which I didn't even pick up on that. So, I mean, yes, I mean, Blackie is at his best a fantastic songwriter, and I mean, we can't say enough about his voice.
Yeah.
So, Unholy Terror is definitely one that's worth checking out. And let's talk about the tour.
Yes.
Now they did 37 shows for this tour, according to Setlist FM. So it's not completely accurate. It's the people who are adding to this site are people like us who've been to the shows. Interestingly, most of the shows, in fact, all of them but 4 were in the United States. Because before that, for many years, a lot of the shows that Blackie was doing were in Europe. I should say W.A.S.P were in Europe and a little bit of Japan as well. Here, they played 4 of the big rock festivals in Europe. They did Wacken, Open Air, they did Gods of Metal, they did Metal Days, and they did the Sweden Rock Festival. As for the dates here, which there were 33 here in the United States, they did hit a lot of the venues that they've been hitting in the past, most notably Jackson, Springfield, Virginia, the Chance in Poughkeepsie, New York, Mulcahy's in Wonton, New York. They played the Trocadero in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. They played the Canyon Club again in Dallas, Texas, Harpo's in Detroit, Michigan. They also played venues such as the Asylum in Portland, Maine, Tremont Music Hall in Charlotte, North Carolina, Newport Music Hall in Columbus, Ohio. And they did a few of the House of Blues venues. They did Maritime Hall in San Francisco, California. So a lot of the same size venues. One thing I found interesting was the only track they played from this album on the tour was Let It Roar, and they didn't play it as the opening track. They would open each show with Eldorado, which is a good opener.
Yeah, but it's still a good opener. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very good opener. Don't get me wrong, but I think maybe you want to open the shows with Let It Roar. And if you want to hit something for Eldorado, put Damnation Angels in there. But it was surprising they only played one song from this album on the tour, and this was a headlining tour in those venues that we were discussing here. But they were also playing, they brought back My Tortured Eyes from KFD, which I found interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, they brought that back. And outside of that, they played most of the goodies, Animal, I Want to Be Somebody, Blind in Texas.
The usual suspects.
Usual suspects. They were doing Real Me and I Don't Need No Doctor on this tour. So those two wonderful cover versions that they did.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, just Let It Roar from this album, which interesting. I mean, what would I have played? Yeah, Let It Roar would be a great closer. And oh gosh, Hate to Love Me. Any of the first three, and maybe Evermore if you want to slow things down.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because it's a wonderful ballad, but they already had some great ballads that people were more familiar with, particularly Sleeping in the Fire.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, they did do this on this tour. So, yes, I'm very pleased with this album. And this is definitely one that I'm going to go back to pretty often. And one thing I want to say, and I've been meaning to say this about W.A.S.P, they were very prolific during this period. If you look from 1995, with Still Not Black Enough, up until Dominator, or actually, wouldn't even say Dominator, Babylon in 2009. So these are albums we will be talking about in the near future. They were putting out a studio album like once every year or every 2 years.
Every other year or so, yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes, and when we get to the next few albums we're going to talk about, they banged out pretty quick. So in an era when bands were going, at this point, you're going 4 or 5 years between albums.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of bands were doing, maybe 3.
Yeah.
But it was still a long time between albums. The fact that the band was putting these out, Blackie was writing all this strong material. I mean, that says a lot. And musically, yeah, maybe some of it was a little bit similar, like I had discussed before. But the songs were here for the most part. The performances were here. This is a strong band. Blackie lost nothing vocally. And I mean, he was getting into a lot of deep subjects on here. I mean, his songwriting had grown. I mean, yes, he did go back a little bit to the 80s on some of the albums we recently discussed, but here, this is a return to form. I mean, I would put this on the same level as Last Command. The highs are a little higher on that album, but the consistency is here on Unholy Terror.
Yep.
So, yes, this is highly recommend this if you never checked it out.
Right. So now, W.A.S.P Nation, now I get to let you speak a little bit. So I'm going to read some thoughts here from some of the folks who commented on a post of mine. So let's see. We got Graham Mitchell here. I do think this is where W.A.S.P began to release some underrated albums. I agree. This would definitely be an underrated album because let's think about this. A lot of bands at this point, pretty much metal's not really happening unless you're Creed or Godsmack or Korn. The traditional heavy metal like this really is not happening too much. But anyway, so he goes, but as an ardent fan of theirs, I really love this one. The outlines for Unholy Terror and Charisma shows Blackie Blackie's dedication to detail and to fact. I agree. Chris Casper, Let It Roar and Ravenheart, two of Blackie's best vocal tracks of his career, in my opinion. Chris Vine, great album, 5 out of 5. Scott Garner, the whole album is good, but Charisma is the standout song to me on that disc. Martin Altenstein, great album. Cheryl Faithful, Let It Roar, Locomotive Man, Charisma, Euphoria, Ravenheart, all outstanding. Love the album. Maria Grazia Ferri, I think she's an Italian. Unholy Terror song and Charisma are strokes of genius. Yes, I would agree with that. Ian Marvel, I loved Unholy Terror, such an awesome album. Felix Hedrick, my first album and still one of my favorites. I wish they play more songs from Unholy Terror. I agree. I was lucky enough to see Hate. I was lucky enough to see Hate to Love Me live, but Charisma would be absolutely amazing. So apparently they may have done it on another tour. I've seen a live version of Charisma, and believe it or not, it was actually down in Pottsville.
Wow.
And the place didn't look like it was much to look at. I don't know I can't remember the name of it. I think it was like in 2004, 2005, but I don't know. And I don't remember it. I don't know if I don't remember how good it sounded, but anyway. And lastly, Coma Cat, OMG, Unholy Terror, Charisma, and Locomotive Man. They just blow my mind at how great they are. So again, a lot of love for that. Here again, it's sad that they didn't get a kind of a decent tour with this. But again, metal is probably not that big a label. 2001, not the big time for traditional heavy metal. So you lost the ability to get really out there and really get some good album sales. But I think with the really diehard fans who are not just the fair weather fans, who just want to be there for the Blind in Texas and Sex Drives and KFD, type material, who are sticking it out in the long run, and they look to an album like this and call it the stroke of genius and a 10 out of 10 and stuff like that. To me, that's just that says something. And the coolest thing of it is this one is even better.
No doubt.
So, last thoughts before we end it up.
I think we
killed it.
Everything. I think we summed this up quite well. I don't.
Right.
Again, if you've never heard it, hear it, check it out.
That's right.
Well worth it.
Absolutely.
Very good album.
Absolutely. So again, as I said, and I'm referenced in the last video to Blackie, please continue to get well. He has been talking about back issues. He had viral laryngitis there for a little bit, but the back issues has been causing him a lot of problems. So please take care of yourself through the remainder of the European tour. You still got till about middle of May to get through. So hopefully he doesn't have to postpone or cancel any shows. For those fans out there, he says if I can stand up, I'm getting out there. So, God bless you, Blackie. I hope you can manage to get through, and hopefully, when the second leg of the North American tour kicks in, that hopefully all will be well, and you'll be raring to go, and to make America hurt. Come to hurt America for the second time around. So with that said, to my fellow Locomotive Man, to my fellow Wasted White Boy, and to my fellow everything else I can come up with, my fellow co-captain, John the Music Nut, thank you, dude, for doing this with me. I appreciate you having you on here.
Thank you, John, for having me on.
Y'all, this is my music corner, Johnny Metal, John Clouser, the Metal Dad. Like, share, subscribe. Let me know what you think about Unholy Terror. And let's talk about this in the comments next. And then we'll see you next week when we're going dying for the world. We'll see you soon.
Take care. Thank you.